Hello in this beautiful week. So, we have quite a bit of things to talk about because, as opposed to previous week, this week, something actually worth noting happened. And of course, this event was something that absolute majority of traders didn't expect, and that was nothing else than bankruptcy and forced liquidation of one of the premier brokerage houses on crypto space called FTX. Now, I think when I recorded previous week's video, no one actually was bothering that much about it because there were only rumors that Binance has dumped all of its FTX tokens, and that was basically it. And FTX themselves claimed that they were solvent. I don't know whether we could find tweets on it, but I think everyone remember that quite well if they had been paying attention to that. But here's my point. This was a major event for crypto community, and it probably will have a lasting effect, at least in medium term, to crypto industry as such. And in fact, we don't know all the tail risks that is associated with this event, but it happened very quickly and no one actually knew nothing. That's why there were reactions on markets. Now, as to what happened to FTX, well, honestly, this is still a developing event because we don't know all of the details, but I have tracked in some of my tweets roughly what was going on. But in general, thing was that they were doing something illegal. Basically, FTX was owned by guy SBF, which is acronyms of his name and surname, and he ran two enterprises. One was prop trading firm. No, it was simply trading firm. Another was broker. So what he did, it was he used his brokerage as a means for information and means of funds for his trading house. What he did basically was he took his customers' funds, put them to his trading company, and traded that money. But of course, when crypto assets fell, he was in a hole, and he was not able to give his loans to his brokerage back, and thus customers were in risk, and Binance sniffed that out, dumped its tokens, and everything was visible at that time. This is one of the tweets which were in depth analyzing this event in more detail, so I can reference for you to that, but there are many sources who are claiming more or less the same information. And that's the thing, they took customers' money, sent it to their other entities via collateralized debt, traded it, lost it, were not able to give it back, and someone exposed them and they were bankrupt. Well, kind of similar thing happened with MF Global 10 years ago, 11, when the major brokerage house did what they're not supposed to do, that was gambling on their customers' money, and lost spectacularly. Now this is the same case, and it might be the case where criminal actions should be considered, because when we will see all details, I'm almost certain that it will be defined as a fraud. So that's the event, because everyone talks about this event because it happened like middle of last week. I wouldn't give you something new, but I will tell you that it made impact on markets. Yes, for first time in a long term, actually it happened in the way that markets really notice it, because these 2 days, 8th and 9th of November, when all the action happened according to European time zone, and it felt actually to all crypto markets. We could see larger or smaller time frames, but we could see that yes, this was the event. This was these hours where there were important announcements, and that was follow-up action over that. Now, I wouldn't give you time analysis of that. I will just illustrate my point that this was event which impacted markets. And why it impacted markets? Because no one expected that, so it caused knee-jerk reaction with unforeseen consequences, and these are the actions that make or break trends, and you cannot forecast them. Excuse me, but you cannot, and it's actually very difficult to trade in very short term on these news. What they could do is maybe they might initiate new trends. We will see whether it would cause new downward spiral for Bitcoin, because it actually break out at lower levels and initiated new trend. Maybe it's fake, maybe it's not, I don't know. We will see after that, but we certainly saw that it made impact. That's my point. Besides that, last week there were news on CPA in the United States, which were slightly better than anticipated. And what does it mean? It meant that markets interpreted that interest rates might not be hiked at levels the Fed was previously suggesting. Thus, all that interest rate hike policy or monetary tightening policy will come to an end a bit slower. Well, I don't know about that, but markets certainly thought that would be happening, and they rallied rather significantly in the last few days. And actually, currencies felt it in a way that too. For instance, if you would see, yes, of course, here is euro against dollar, you would see that dollar fell rather sharply here, and markets certainly were anticipating that it will change something into Fed. Well, whether it will change something or not, I don't know, but this is the prices after the news. So we will see about that. But here's my point. News were interpreted much better than forecasted. That's why dollar fell and stock market rose in anticipation to slightly less harsh monetary tightening or end of monetary tightening as a whole, and tail event in crypto industry which rattled crypto markets, and it's still developing. So we might see other news or other events about that, but in general I would subjectively say this was spectacular failure, and more we see, I have made a couple of tweets here about it, more we see, the more we could assess the absurdity of this event. This is in fact CEO of trading house that was used by FTX, and if you see those interviews, it were really funny if you aren't that serious, because all that situation, all that business, all that industry is simply beyond my understanding. How people were so gullible and naive, but that happens all the time, with more or less exceptions, but you could see those patterns in the dot-com bubble, in the housing boom, now in the crypto boom, that some complete schmucks, complete retards were rising to extreme heights extremely fast. But of course, fall is next logical step, and basically this guy blew it all. I think he's not only not a billionaire in a couple of days, but probably he will be seriously in debt, and he will be facing criminal and civil charges across the globe. So I don't think this is the best times for him, and his tweets looks very funny. I don't know what he's drinking or smoking these days, but probably he has some lot of things to talk about. But nevertheless, let's move on forward. Let's see how that FTX will develop. Maybe I will make separate video only to this industry and see what we could expect in next week. Now, next week there are a couple of interest rates in New Zealand. If you trade this currency, many don't trade, but it's interesting currency, and some uninteresting news which I usually don't bother. So that's events of the last week. And next week, of course, FTX will be the headlines for a couple of times. Now I will also try to analyze FTX situation as a whole, to try to understand depths of retardedness, depths of absurdity and ignorance that has been plagued in crypto industry for years. And maybe there will be something interesting, so I could make a separate video for that. But until that, stay tuned for my next video. I'll be continuing to analyze a couple of interesting stocks, purely from trading perspective, look at their trends and possibilities, how good traders could capitalize on those great moves. So be tuned for my next videos.